She only wanted to cross the street safely, but instead of a helping hand, she was met with cruelty that would echo in every heart that witnessed it. A blind black woman, cane in hand, became the target of a uniformed officer's rage. A man, sworn to protect, now exposing the ugliest side of power and prejudice. The sound of splintering wood cracked through the air as he snapped her lifeline in half, leaving her stranded, humiliated, and trembling in front of strangers. What he didn't know was that this act of hate would unleash a truth he could never prepare for. The question is, what happens when the world finally sees who she really is and who her son turns out to be? Unbeknownst to the officer, the crowd around Angela reacted instantly. Shock, horror, whispered concern. Children clung to parents. Soft gasps and murmurings filled the morning air. Phones emerged to capture the moment, some trembling in the hands of bystanders. Angela remained steady, her calm resilience a stark contrast to the officer's aggression, as the crowd froze in silent witness to the cruelty unfolding before them. Angela's mornings began long before the city fully woke. In the faint light of dawn, she would sit quietly by her window, letting the sounds outside guide her into the day. The gentle hum of traffic, the soft shuffle of neighbors heading to work, and the whistle of a distant train. These were her markers of time. She could no longer see the rising sun, but she felt it, warm against her skin, carrying the promise of another day she refused to waste. Her small apartment, tucked away on the corner of an aging brick building, was her sanctuary. Every item had its place, the teapot always to the left of the stove, her folded cane on the narrow table by the door, and her son's framed graduation photo resting against the wall. Though she couldn't see the smile in that picture, she remembered it clearly, the pride, the ambition, and the certainty in Marcus's eyes. That memory alone was enough to push her through the quiet hardships of daily life. Angela had been blind for nearly 15 years, the result of a slow-moving illness that stole her sight piece by piece. At first, it was blurred edges and faint shadows, then shapes without detail, and finally, nothing but darkness. She could have surrendered to despair, but she chose not to. She decided early on that blindness would not erase her worth, nor her ability to live with dignity. Her neighbors often marveled at her independence. Every morning, they'd see her tapping her way down the cracked sidewalks with a grace that seemed to defy her blindness. She navigated curbs, uneven stones, and impatient crowds without complaint. Children often called out greetings, their voices filled with genuine affection. To them, Miss Angela wasn't the blind lady down the street. She was the woman who always had a kind word, a gentle laugh, and a story to share. Her days were structured but meaningful. She devoted several hours a week volunteering at the community center. Although she couldn't see the children's faces, she could hear their hesitation while reading aloud and noticed how their voices, cracked with self-doubt, which made her aware of just how to lift their spirits. She would lean forward, listening intently, and say, "Don't just read the words, feel them, make them yours." Soon, laughter and confidence would fill the room. She couldn't see their smiles, but she knew they were there. It wasn't always easy. At the grocery store, she sometimes felt the sting of impatience when she moved too slowly in the checkout line. Once, a cashier spoke to her as though she were a child, her words exaggerated, her tone condescending. Another time, a stranger muttered under his breath about people like her, holding up the line. Angela never responded harshly. She simply lifted her chin, paid for her items, and walked away. But inside, she felt the invisible weight of prejudice pressing against her dignity. Still, her faith in people never crumbled entirely. She believed kindness outweighed cruelty, even when cruelty tried to prove otherwise. And when doubt crept in, Marcus was her anchor. Marcus was 23, sharp-witted, and driven, with a future that glowed brighter than the city lights. From a young age, he had witnessed the way society treated his mother, the subtle dismissals, the careless words, and the silent stares. Those moments etched themselves into his memory and fueled his determination to pursue law. "One day," he often told her, "I'll be the voice for people who are ignored, for people who are silenced." Angela would smile, running her fingers across his face to trace the shape of his determination. She believed him with all her heart. She believed that every sacrifice she made, the long hours of work she once endured, the quiet nights alone, the meals skipped so Marcus could have more, would one day be worth it when her son stood in a courtroom defending someone else's dignity. But the world had a way of reminding them both that justice wasn't equally distributed. Angela had felt it in the whispers when she walked hand in hand with her son as a boy. Whispers that wondered aloud why a black child was dressed so neatly, so smartly, as if success wasn't meant for him. She had felt it in the tension that sometimes filled the air when Marcus spoke confidently to authority figures, as if his very assurance was seen as defiance. Angela carried these experiences, quietly, never wanting to burden her son. Yet deep inside, she feared the weight of prejudice would one day try to break them. That morning, as she prepared to leave her apartment, everything seemed ordinary. She boiled water for tea, ran her fingers over the familiar ridges of the teacup Marcus had given her, and slipped on her comfortable shoes. She picked up her cane, folding it open with a practiced snap, and whispered a small prayer of gratitude. The air outside smelled of rain about to fall, fresh and sharp. She inhaled deeply, letting the scent ground her. She walked with steady steps toward the bus stop, cane tapping, ears alert to the world around her. She knew this route better than most. The dip in the sidewalk 2 blocks down, the loose gravel near the corner, and the bakery on the right that always released a sweet, warm aroma around this time. People brushed past her, some offering soft greetings, others hurrying by in silence. But then the air shifted. Conversations quieted. The rhythm of footsteps around her slowed. She couldn't see the eyes watching, but she could feel them. She tightened her grip on her cane, instinctively sensing the presence of authority in the heavy boots approaching from behind. A voice rang out, sharp and cutting. "Hey, you there!" It was not the tone of someone offering help. It was an order, thick with authority and something darker, contempt. Angela paused, her cane steady against the cracked pavement. She did not move until she heard the boots grind closer, loud and deliberate. "Didn't you hear me?" the man barked. Angela raised her chin, unwilling to cower. "I heard you," she said, calm but quiet. "Then answer me." His voice boomed. "Where are you going? Tapping that stick all over the place. Are you trying to cause trouble out here?" The words were absurd, yet dangerous. Angela froze. Around her, she sensed the crowd shifting. Shoes scuffed, voices lowered. Breaths caught. She stayed still, but he pushed harder. "Don't just stand there ignoring me," he spat. "Look at me when I'm talking to you." The cruelty struck her like a slap. Look at me. Did he not notice, or did he notice too well? Either way, it wasn't ignorance, it was humiliation. He wanted her to feel small, powerless, and embarrassed. Angela's cane tapped lightly as she adjusted her footing. That sound, her anchor in the dark, seemed to ignite his fury. "That stick," he sneered. "Swinging it around like you own the sidewalk? You think people want you blocking their way? Acting like you're helpless one minute, dangerous the next?" A murmur rippled through the crowd. A woman's voice rose timidly. "She's blind, officer." "Please." But the words were drowned in his authority. He didn't turn, and he didn't acknowledge. His focus was locked on Angela, as if humiliating her in front of others was part of his duty. Angela spoke carefully, each word chosen like a step across thin ice. I'm walking to the bus stop, that's all. But cruelty doesn't need reason. It only needs an outlet. In one quick, violent motion, he yanked the cane from her hand. Angela gasped, her arms reaching instinctively. But too late. And then it came. Snap. The sound was brutal in its simplicity, a crack of wood splitting apart, her lifeline shattered in an instant. The crowd reacted. Gasps, shouts, the click of recording phones. A few people cried out, "Hey!" Others whispered, horrified but rooted in place. Some pulled their children closer, shielding them from the ugliness unfolding before their eyes. Angela staggered, disoriented. Without her cane, the world wasn't just dark. It was treacherous, a shifting maze with no boundaries. She bent, slowly, her hands brushing the pavement until she felt the jagged edges of wood. Splinters bit her fingertips. It wasn't just a cane. It was freedom, independence, and dignity. And now it lay broken, discarded at her feet. Marcus had been sitting in his law school library, surrounded by casebooks, when his phone vibrated with a message from a classmate. "Is this your mom?" He clicked the link, and his world stopped. There she was, his mother, standing alone on the cracked pavement. The officer was towering over her, the sickening sound of wood snapping in two, his mother's cane, her lifeline, broken like it was nothing. Marcus's jaw clenched, his hands shaking. Every page of civil rights history he had ever studied, every injustice he had ever read about, came alive in that one cruel act against the woman who had given him everything. Without hesitation, he grabbed his bag and left. His professor's voice echoed faintly behind him, but Marcus couldn't hear. All he could hear was the sound of his mother's cane shattering. All he could see was her dignity under attack. And all he knew was that he had to get to her. Back on the street, Angela stood tall despite her trembling hands. The officer barked at the crowd, "Disperse! There's nothing to see here!" But the irony hung heavy. There was everything to see here, the very face of injustice laid bare in daylight. The crowd didn't move. Phones stayed lifted, whispers swelled. A woman muttered, "He broke her cane. That's a hate crime." Another added, "He's on camera. He's finished." Still, no one dared step closer. Fear held them back. Minutes later, through the growing crowd, a voice cut through, steady, sharp, and commanding. "Mom." Angela turned her head toward the sound, her breath catching. "Marcus!" The crowd parted as Marcus pushed forward, his tall frame radiating fury and control all at once. His eyes locked on the officer, burning with the kind of fire that no badge could intimidate. He rushed to his mother's side, gently taking the broken cane from her trembling hands. "What did you do to her?" Marcus's voice thundered. The officer stiffened. "Step back. This doesn't concern you." But Marcus didn't move. "This is my mother. It concerns me more than you'll ever understand." The crowd murmured louder. Some cheered softly, emboldened by Marcus's presence. For the first time, the officer faltered, his confidence slipping. Marcus knelt beside his mother, his hand steadying her shoulder. "I saw it, Mom. I saw everything." His jaw tightened. He turned back to the officer. "You broke her cane. You humiliated her, and you did it because you thought no one would stop you, because you thought power meant impunity." The crowd erupted with shouts. "Yeah! We saw it. Justice for her." The energy shifted. What had been silence and fear turned into collective outrage. The officer stammered, "You don't know who you're talking to." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "No, you don't know who she is. This is Angela Davis, my mother, the woman who raised me with more strength than you'll ever understand. The woman who taught children to read when society ignored them. The woman whose resilience has carried generations forward. And I am her son, a law student soon to be, an attorney. And I promise you, Every ounce of my education, every tool of the law will be used to make sure this moment defines your career." The officer froze. His smirk was gone, replaced by unease, then fear. Authority had shifted. The crowd cheered, some chanting Angela's name. Strangers stepped forward, offering their arms to guide her, their voices rallying around her dignity. No longer was she standing alone. Angela felt tears well, not from shame, but from pride. Her son stood taller than the man with the badge. His words carried more power than the uniform ever could. In that moment, the humiliation transformed into revelation. The world saw her not as weak, not as broken, but as the mother of strength. Marcus placed an arm gently around her shoulders. "You're not alone, Mom. Not now. Not ever." The officer stood surrounded, his authority dismantled, his cruelty recorded, his smirk gone. For the first time, he realized he wasn't the one in control anymore. And as Angela held her head high, broken cane in hand, the story shifted. This wasn't a story of humiliation anymore. It was a story of resistance, of resilience, of a mother and son standing against a world that tried to silence them. The crowd did not scatter that day. If anything, it grew. The chants carried further than the officer's commands ever could. Within hours, the video spread beyond the block, beyond the neighborhood, and beyond the city. It wasn't just a clip anymore. It was a movement. Angela sat in her small living room that night, her broken cane resting across her lap like a scar from battle. The air was heavy with exhaustion, yet her spirit held steady. She was blind, yes, but she could feel the world shifting around her. The phone buzzed endlessly. Friends, strangers, reporters, activists. Everyone wanted to speak to the woman, who had stood her ground. Marcus, meanwhile, had already begun his fight. He sat at her kitchen table, laptop open, his hands moving furiously across the keys. Legal documents, civil rights statutes, case precedents. His education sharpened into a weapon. "Mom," he said, his voice steady. "This isn't just about us. This journey is about every person humiliated, every voice silenced, and every life disrupted because someone thought their badge made them untouchable. We're taking this all the way." Angela touched his hand gently, her face softening. "Marcus," she whispered, "don't carry my pain like it's your own chain. Carry it like a torch. Light the way, but don't let it burn you." Her words sank into him. They didn't cool his fire, but they shaped it. This wasn't revenge. This was justice. The following week, the officer's name was plastered across headlines. "Cop caught breaking blind woman's cane." "Viral video sparks outrage." "Community demands action." The police department scrambled to respond, releasing statements that rang hollow to a public already furious. Outside City Hall, crowds gathered with signs. "Justice for Angela. Dignity is not optional. Blindness is not weakness." For once, Angela found herself at the center of a movement. She felt the vibrations of chants under her feet when Marcus guided her into rallies. She heard the urgency in people's voices as they promised her change. She smelled the ink of fresh posters pressed into her hands. And though she couldn't see the faces, she felt their unity. Strangers standing shoulder to shoulder, refusing to look away. But the road was not easy. The officer hired lawyers who painted Angela as confused, difficult, and even delusional. They claimed the cane had been accidentally damaged. They spun stories about proper procedure. Each word was a knife, trying to cut her down again. In the courtroom, Angela sat silently while Marcus stood tall, his voice echoing against the high walls. He played the video for the jury. The snap of the cane reverberated through the room like thunder. Gasps filled the chamber. And then he said the words that struck deeper than any evidence. "My mother was not holding a stick. She was holding her independence. He didn't just break wood, he broke dignity. And that is something the law must protect. The jury leaned forward. Reporters scribbled furiously. The officer's mask cracked. Outside the courthouse, the community waited. They carried candles. They sang songs of unity. They cheered when Angela emerged, Marcus by her side. She lifted her broken cane high, not as a symbol of defeat, but as proof of survival. Weeks turned into months. The case dragged on, but Angela's story never faded. Schools invited her to speak. Churches echoed her testimony. Activists carried her name into marches across the country. Her story became a rallying cry, not just against racism, but against all forms of cruelty masked as authority. And through it all, Angela remained the same woman who once taught children to read in her small classroom, who once sat quietly at the bus stop, and who once asked for nothing but dignity. She didn't see herself as a hero, she saw herself as human, and maybe that's why the world listened, because her humanity was undeniable, unshakable, and unbroken. In the end, the officer was dismissed from the force. His name, once spoken with arrogance, became synonymous with shame. His badge could not shield him. His smirk was gone for good. Angela, however, rose higher. She didn't just win a case. She ignited change. The city council passed new policies ensuring protections for disabled individuals in encounters with law enforcement. Training programs were restructured. Officers were reminded dignity was not negotiable. Marcus graduated law school with honors, his reputation already forged in the fire of his mother's case. He dedicated his career to civil rights, his very first victory written in the name of Angela Davis. And Angela? She walked with a new cane, stronger and steadier, gifted to her by the very community that once stood silent and then rose in her defense. Every tap of that cane on the sidewalk was no longer just navigation, it was declaration. I am here. I am unbroken. I will be seen. Her story lived far beyond her. It became a reminder whispered in classrooms, shouted in protests, and written in history books. Sometimes, the smallest act of cruelty can awaken the greatest storm of justice. Angela's name became more than a name. It became a promise. That silence can roar, that weakness can rise, that dignity, once denied, can change the world. And though she could not see the movement she sparked, she could feel it, in the footsteps beside her, in the chants that carried her name, in the steady arm of her son guiding her forward. The world had tried to humiliate her. Instead, it crowned her with resilience. And that is the power of her story.